this is Vicki Gervais at the Greater Gainesville Chamber of Commerce, and I'm delighted to be joined today by our incumbent, Keith Perry, for State Senate, the new District 9. And we're going to talk to him a little bit and drill down on some issues as we approach our November 8th election. Keith, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we're going to have a few minutes for an intro, and then I've got some questions for you, and then we'll wrap it all up at the end. All right, so jump right in when you're ready.
Good. Well, first, thanks to the Chamber for doing this. I think it's important for the members to be able to access information on candidates and become informed on these issues. There's a lot riding on it. I mean, the state of Florida, and I think if you look throughout the recent history and look at different states and the policies that have been acted by the legislature and the governor, you're going to see that Florida's kind of led the edge on allowing businesses to get back to normal and people to go out, whether it's going to church, going to a restaurant, or going to work. So there's really a lot on the stake on these campaigns that come up and elections that come up. So, you know, my name's Keith Perry. I grew up in Gainesville, graduated Buell's High School. My father was a professor at the University of Florida. I thought I'd take a year off from high school and go to college and started a little roofing business. So 45 years later, here I am. Yeah, my resume is pretty short. I had a roofing business and then I've served in the legislature. So, but been active in the local Chamber of Commerce here as well as the state chamber for quite some time, served on the board for a while in different capacities. My reason that I ran back in 2010. So I served 6 years in the Florida House, got first elected then, and then now 6 years in the state Senate. I've got one more term to run and I will be done. And part of me says, thank you for term limits that it gets you out of there. It's kind of it's a great opportunity, great experience, but sometimes somebody else needs to come in and step up. The reason that I decided to run back in 2010 was really as a young kid. I was 18 years old, started my business. And if you think about, I tell this to a lot of people, when I was a kid growing up in Gainesville, almost every single business was owned by a mom and pop, almost all of them. We had a J.C. Penney's later, we got a Sears that came into town, but almost everything was owned by individuals. 50 years later, almost every single business is owned by a franchise or a corporation. There's still some opportunities for people to start a business, but for the most industries, those are going to be the regulatory and legal environment has just excluded people from being able to be involved in being an entrepreneur and go out and change the world. I meet with college kids all the time, and if you ask them what do they want in life, what do they want to accomplish, it is not a paycheck. It's not an inbox, outbox paycheck. We want to go out. We have skills, talents, and ideas, and visions, and dreams, and we want to go out and make a difference in the world. But we've seen that change. And we've almost, if you think about this, we've moved a little bit, maybe not even a little bit, a lot into an aristocratic kind of society. So if you think of the largest businesses, the largest banking and insurance companies, the largest law firms, and some of the other ones, the heads of those law firms, the heads of those banking and insurance agencies and other corporations, the majority of them come from an elite group of schools. If you take the legal world, I think Clarence Thomas, I believe this is correct, I think Clarence Thomas was the first person to hire a clerk for the Supreme Court that wasn't one of the Ivy League schools, hired somebody out of the University of Florida School of Law. So what we've done is we've taken where you can move up the corporate ladder by your ingenuity, by your creativity, by your hard work, and we've really limited the majority of the people in the corporate world. So you got to ask yourself, is that good? Is that good for us? Is it good for long term? If you like uniformity, if you like conformity, then you're going to be pretty happy with what we have. Tell people you can go to a McDonald's in Gainesville and order a meal. You can go to California and order a meal. It's exactly the same. You can get the same experience in a variety of ways, whether it's insurance, banking, whatever the other industries are. It's exactly the same. And so, you know, again, the question is that good long term? I think not. I think that when you exclude the majority of people in the country from using their skills to go make a difference, then that's not a good track to be on. I was just the other night at the Cade Museum on prize night. One of the things that's interesting even there is that we found a lot of the new inventors are not U.S. born citizens. They may be U.S. citizens, but they're not born here. And we've seen this movement where the United States dominated in all new technologies and all new innovations for 100+ years. And now we've seen that shift into other countries. And even the ones in the United States are happening by foreigners. So again, you got to ask yourself, what are the reasons for this? And are there things to do that we can kind of change that direction of the economy? And that's what I've been working on for 12 years. I've been working on issues, and they may be really minor issues, they seem. Last year, I passed an occupational licensing bill and a home-based business bill that allows people to work out of their homes under certain conditions. But we wanted to open that up, that people can start. People are doing it a lot anyway, but they're doing it illegally, and we wanted to make sure that people want to do that doing it legally. Also passed a occupational license bill where the state has said, look, here's this group of industries that we want to regulate. It's in the public interest to regulate them. Well, then we have cities and counties that have come in and said, well, we're going to add on to those. We're going to take things like pressure washers or painters or flooring people or something else, and we're going to say, we're going to regulate you. What's happened in that regard is we've taken people, take Hillsborough County, for example. There's 24 towns and municipalities in Hillsborough County. Theoretically, you could be a pressure washer or a painting contractor, or you want to start one, and you might have to pay a fee that's even more than my state license for a city or a town. Well, then you'd go 10 miles away and pay it to another one, or 10 miles away to pay to another one. One county, theoretically, you could have 24 different licenses because the state doesn't regulate it. And so these cities and counties, and to be honest with you, if they were doing something that was compelling interest to protect the public, you might have some verification for that. Really what they are is just a scheme to raise money. And they were raising lots and lots of money that would go into not do anything to protect the public or train people, but it was just a money thing. So that's last year. Every single year I've run these bills. I get accused a lot of home rule violation. Our own city commission and county commission has called me out on that multiple times. I can tell you the bills that I run do not give power back to Tallahassee or power to me as a legislator. What they do is they take it away from a city or a county and give it back to the individual. And there's a big difference between making more regulation out of Tallahassee versus taking regulation away from a city or a county and giving that back to an individual. So those are, my big reasons why I ran and what I focused on. And those don't make the headlines. Out of the 280 some bills we passed last year, the 5 real controversial bills will make all the headlines, but the rest of them are critically important as we look to break these walls that have been built up over years of the government regulation that have just really crippled a lot of people from pursuing the American dream.
Okay, well, let's jump down and drill down a little bit. That was a great intro, and I will reiterate again, as I always do, that nobody got the questions ahead of time. So even though this seems like the perfect segue, it is just because Keith gave me a great opening here. So the first question is, if you return to your job for the next session, what are going to be your top priorities and projects this time around?
Okay, so 3, and I didn't write any of down, didn't know what the questions were, but I can tell you my 3 priorities, again, will be business regulation and tort reform. Anything that allows individuals to compete and start their business. A priority that's been way before I got involved with politics is criminal justice reform and work. And when I say criminal justice reform, don't confuse that. I've been involved with this for 26, 27 years. This is not being light on crime. When people commit a crime, we have a system, it's a punishment system. And people are sent to prison or fined or whatever to punish them for bad behavior. We're not changing that. What I'm looking at is what do we do once we have someone incarcerated? If we have, and sometimes even before that incarceration, the intervention we can have. So what we have now is we have common denominators in the prison system. We have the majority of men in prison have no father in the home. A lot of women don't either, but fatherless homes are there. I'm not affecting going back in time and how do we do that? I think that's another great conversation to have about the culture in fatherless homes. But what I'm looking at is I've got a captive audience. We've got a person sitting in the Department of Criminal Justice, Department of Corrections. And so we have an opportunity, is the way I look at it, is that we can take this person and hopefully provide a setting that would be conducive for them to learn, get skilled, and create a person that is able to work outside. And I look at that in a couple of different ways. There's two ways to look at it. One is it's fiscal. If we can keep a person from recidivating, which we have about a 50% recidivism rate after 3 years, whether it's in local, state, or federal corrections department. So that's a lot of people that get released. 20, 30,000 people are being released every year. When you have half of those back in the criminal justice system within a 3-year period, what you've done is you have a huge cost. But more important than the cost, it's a public safety. If we house people, they get out, they do their time, they go back and commit crimes. And by the way, most people who are arrested for crimes later, it wasn't their first time. They committed multiple crimes until they got arrested. So we have multiple victims. And so we have a duty from a public safety standpoint to make sure we do everything we can while they are incarcerated to make sure they don't go back into the system. So we're going to work on that. That's like I said, been a key way before I got involved with the political world. And then the third thing is early childhood education. My number one goal the last 4 years, it's actually been 5 years, and I had the funding vetoed a couple of years, has been music in elementary education. If you look at, I'll just give you one data point, not to bore yourself or your audience with this. Kids at 4 years of age on the low end have a vocabulary of about 500 words, on a high end about 1,100 words. So it's about a 2-to-1 ratio for 4-year-old kids. By the time they're 6, the low end has a 4,000 or 5,000 word vocabulary. On a high end, they can have an 18,000 to 20,000 word vocabulary. So in a 2-year period, we've seen this explosion in the higher end. The lower end is growing, but they're getting further behind in where they are. The disparity is even further. They go into the school system. What's a kindergarten, first grade teacher going to do with a kid who has a 4,000 word vocabulary and a kid who has a 20,000 word vocabulary? You're going to segregate them out. You cannot focus on both at the same time. The teachers are under tremendous pressure on how can they teach kids. And what we've seen is the lower end kids get further behind, never catch up. And so I've done a lot of research, and it's a simple thing, but music and arts are a way that take real little kids and can change them in 2 different ways. One is academically, where we've seen incredible improvements in reading and math and some of the other associated parts of this. And the other part is the integration into a classroom, the assimilation into a classroom. So if you go into the pilot program that we have going, I was just down at Fort McCoy Elementary School a while back. I sat in a class of first graders for about 25 minutes. Amazing watching what they were doing with tones and pitches and beats and tying that into math and language. But the other thing you notice is there was 100% participation for the entire time I'm in there. I don't know how many first grade classes have 100% participation for a 25-minute segment that I was in there. But the program that we have going that I pushed and got funded for, it's been my number one priority. We have the University of Florida is doing a study. It's both a qualitative and quantitative study. Again, academics, integration into the classroom. We've got the preliminary report out now. We're looking to extend it 1 more year. COVID kind of messed up that study a little bit. But we're looking at that. We're looking at extending that 1 more year. And then my goal is to have the data to bring back to the legislature and say, here's hard data that our investment of this minor amount will have a huge impact. You know, one of the problems in Tallahassee, I think it's government in general, we don't think that far ahead. You know, we're looking at 2-year election cycles, 1-year budget cycles. What we have to do is look 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead. What are we doing today that's going to have an impact? And so I think the music to start with, arts in general as secondary, is something that we really need to have. And I think it's going to be, like I said, I think we'll see from the report coming out from the University of Florida, this is going to have by far biggest impact for the least amount of investment by the state.
Very good. Okay, well, let's switch now to a little less, probably a little less pleasant of a subject, I guess, particularly what's gone on in the last couple of weeks, which is earlier this year, as you well know, we had a special legislative session devoted to the insurance crisis in our state. Given Hurricane Ian's devastating impact around the entire state, basically, what measures do you think need to happen with the new session next year?
Well, there's a couple things we can look at. We budgeted a lot of money for infrastructure and looking at how we can make especially coastal communities more resilient. And that deals with more investment into the public sector, which is roads and bridges and industrial, our school buildings and so forth. So that's part of it. We're made a pretty big investment last year. That's going to be years down the road to have any kind of an impact. But we're looking at that. The biggest thing on the homeowners insurance, which is in a crisis mode, we've had more companies either decide not to write new policies or become insolvent. And that is a direct result of trial attorneys that have filed literally thousands and thousands of claims. Sorted out, if you're around long enough, you remember sinkhole claims. People would have a crack in their house from a settlement, and then, insurance are paying out hundreds of thousands of dollars for a crack. We've seen that with cast iron pipes in houses, and now we see it in the roofing segment. I'm in the roofing business. We do not participate in that. I think it's very unfortunate that we have attorneys. I think there's one attorney, just one firm that has 15 or 20,000 cases. And what happens is if, people are coming to knocking on your door, especially in South and Central Florida, you're going to see entire neighborhoods that have free roofs. And the insurance companies are paying an exorbitant rate just for the roof. And then on top of that, they may pay you $20,000 or $30,000 for a roof. They may pay $30,000 or $40,000 to the trial attorney. And so your free roof has cost yourself and your neighbors unstable trajectory. The trial attorneys have a tremendous amount of power in the state of Florida. And this is also a thing where we can look at partisan politics. From the other side of the aisle, I've gotten no support from the other side of the aisle when it comes to these things. And when you talk about people for the working class people and that they need to really check who they're representing and who benefits from the votes that some of my colleagues have taken. We made some changes in that. You as a homeowner, you should have the right to say, okay, I want to pick what kind of insurance I want. I want to pick what kind of deductible I want. I want to pick whether a tree falls on my roof, whether I can have the thing that says I'm going to patch it on my roof, or I'm going to have a whole new roof. That should be your choice. We got that finally to a point where you do have a little bit more freedom to decide what you want. And those are going to have an impact, but they're going to take a while. We're already kind of at this cliff, if you will. And Hurricane Ian is not helping that out at all. I think that's a storm of 19 that we really haven't seen in Florida with the storm surge mainly. And probably since the 1930s. Yeah. It's the last time that we had a storm with a storm surge quite like that. So we're working on it. I think this is the unfortunate catalyst to really make things happen. We've been trying for, me and a senator out of St. Pete, Jeff Brandis, have been working on this for years and years with very little, some success, but very little. Again, this is going to be kind of a tragedy, a catastrophic event that I hope it's unfortunate it comes to this point, but I'm hoping at least this will be the propellant to say, okay, now you have to make major changes to the insurance market. Okay,
very good. Speaking of kind of South Florida and really the state in general, and we hear this all the time at the chamber, right? Florida's population is expected to expand by 32% by 2040. The number that gets tossed around a lot is 1,000 new residents coming into the state every day, right? Given that implication for our state, what do you think the legislature should be doing to prepare?
Yeah, so our role really is to look at the growth of Florida. We have certain obligations and some things we don't, and we should not be involved with. So we have obligations to make sure that we have the resources that are there to protect not the current residents, but to protect the current residents and generations to come. And so we have to look at that and say, what are we doing and what are we allowing that would be very negative impact long-term on the state of Florida. And we have that. The biggest thing we have is infrastructure. And what are we doing with the infrastructure? It's easy for people to, and I met a couple a while back that had moved down to Florida from New Jersey, I believe, moved into an area in Marion County, former cow pastures, very nice neighborhood, but they didn't want a neighborhood across the street. It's easy for us to say, well, I'm here. Yep. I want my slice of paradise. Now you can't come. And that happens all the time. It's not government's role in that regard to say, no, we're going to cut off and limit that. Our goal and role should be to say, we're going to make sure things are going to work long term. And the infrastructure, and we have, so even the resiliency thing on the coast, we've done some of that. We've allowed through the Public Service Commission to allow some of the hardening of the infrastructure from electrical grids, underground stuff, a lot of the other things that we're doing long term that are going to have a big impact. We have to look at, and I know the toll roads was popular by some, very unpopular by others. You cannot take roads and continue just to widen them. You can't do that. And well, unless you're in Gainesville, then we narrow them. And we don't want just yesterday.
We like to do our own thing here.
Yeah, and I was on Main Street yesterday to go from at night to go from 4th Avenue where I cut over up to about 8th Avenue. I don't know how long it took me to go. You could easily have walked, and it wasn't that it was a game day or something else. It's just the fact that the city of Gainesville has said our infrastructure things are going to be much different than what the normal, what I believe is the normal constituent. So we have a role to do. We're going to look at that. We're going to do a long range plans. I just got matter of fact, I was going over an email from FDOT today, looking at some of the planning for the county in all the counties in this area. Side note on that, a little bit sad note. Alachua County does not get much money from FDOT because we don't ask for it. And so we're seeing the Metropolitan Transportation Planning on their 5-year work plan. If you don't ask for the money, it's not coming here. And we have people in this area in Alachua County that don't want to improve roads and infrastructure. And so we don't ask for it, and they're not going to send it to us. That's extremely unfortunate that we have leaders that are kind of social engineering you and I. And my guess is in Alachua County, if you're not a student, my guess is about 98% of us are going to travel in a car to get from point A to point B. And what they've done is the social engineering is saying, we don't like your 98% of you that drive in cars and commute that way. And so what we're going to make it is we're going to make it extremely difficult for you to get around. So we have money that is available from the state that we pay taxes for that is not being utilized by our county because we have people who won't even ask for it.
Okay. All right. On a, similarly, I don't know if it's divisive, but a similar topic, I think, a dramatic shift in voter registrations is taking place. The number of NPAs, no party affiliations, has almost doubled to 27% of total voters. What impacts do you think this shift is going to have on the running of our state?
Well, look, it is what it is. So I can kind of look at it as a little bit of a positive in some ways. My seat has always been one of the toughest seats in the state of Florida. And so I have a seat that Biden won, the seat I'm currently in. That made me have to work really hard, and it had to make me meet a lot of different people from different backgrounds. And so if you have independents who, if they're truly independent, most independents are going to lean left or right. But if they're truly independent, means that you have to go out and work for the vote and support. And I think that just requires us to do a little more work, a little more effort, which is a good thing. You don't want to have politicians just walk into office necessarily without having to meet people, debate people, have people understand who they are. But I think probably the biggest problem, or the reason that's being driven that way, is the media, which is the media is not in the business to give you news. They're in the business to make money. And controversial news sells a whole lot better than good news. And so we've seen the political landscape change quite a bit, where we as politicians are not judged by who we are. We're not having interviews like this with media. What we are is, we're a Republican, we're judged this way. We're a Democrat, we're judged this way. And that turns a lot of people off. So they've said, well, we're not going to be involved with either party, which is unfortunate, because I was telling someone, I was at an event yesterday with Yvonne Henson, and probably 97% of the bills that were passed were nonpartisan. And but the 2 or 3% of bills that are partisan got all the attention, and the media has really kind of divided us up. So, but it is what it is. We'll, we work hard every campaign, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, great. Okay, so now I have one of those, if you were a tree type of questions, but it isn't that. It is, why should the local business community vote for you?
Well, it's as clear as day. If you think about my opponent, was a former city commissioner, was a former county commissioner. If you look at what I started out with, which is, what is the environment for businesses? And is my opponent going to be on the side of businesses, or is he going to be on the side of bureaucrats and government agencies? And I think he's shown that, and I've shown the exact opposite. I've gone against the grain. Again, I'm the preemption king, and I'm criticized daily by our city commission and county commissioner as again, now they're misinterpreting it. They're saying that I'm giving Tallahassee more power, but I'm really not. I'm really fighting that regulatory environment, and I'm fighting on a state level as well. And I'm fighting the trial attorneys. So if you're a working guy or gal in our community, if you own a business or work for a business or want to expand your business, that's a clear choice, in my opinion. And I'll just give you one other example. I bought a building downtown Gainesville, not too far from the chamber there, the old Masonic Lodge. I put a 20-foot by 40-foot addition on the back. I wanted to keep the integrity of that building. So to put the elevator and fire stairs and ADA bathrooms, I had to do an addition on the back. I didn't want to tear the interior of that building up. So to do that 20-foot by 40-foot addition on a building that's been there since 1918, I had to spend tens of thousands of dollars in engineering and civil work. I had to spend almost $90,000 to put an underground storage drainage thing in there. Remember, this is a half acre of land on a building that's been there to do it. Plus, when I got the plans from the engineering company and submitted those to the Gainesville building, not the building department, it was the building and site review. Just on the site review process, it went to 19 different people. 19 people had to review that and come up with their take and their comments and their input. And I'm not faulting the 19 people. They have a job to do, and they're doing their job. I'm faulting a system that employs 19 people in different capacities to take a half acre section of land to add a 20-foot by 40-foot addition to it and go through that process, and then to comply with all the regulatory environments. I was able to secure the funding. I was able to do that. Most people would not do that. Most people would not be able to secure the funding, wouldn't have that opportunity. I've been working 45 years. I saved my money, and I had some other properties. I was able to do some things to make that work. But think about that environment. For someone says, wow, there's a really nice historic building in Gainesville, let's buy it and restore it. No, it's not feasible to do that. So that's where I am. I shouldn't really say it's clear. I'm not going to speak on behalf of my opponent. He can say what he wants to. I just know he was a former city commissioner, a former county commissioner, and our city commission and county commissioner has not been very business friendly since I've been in Gainesville for 50 some years.
Okay, well, in our last couple minutes, anything else that you want to get in before we close out? Anything we didn't talk about, or just wrap it up and bring us home for the afternoon?
Well, I just tell you the biggest issue that I meant to say this earlier and I didn't, and I'm sorry, because it's kind of new on my radar, and that is the education of our children outside of the music that I've been involved with. And that is what I believe is 100% indoctrination of our youth when it comes to transgender and homosexual issues. If you look at, as an adult, we have an opportunity to have discussion, make decisions. You're an adult, you do what you want to do. I don't think the majority of citizens in this area send their children to school to be taught things that are way outside of what we would consider the norm. I've got classes that I've got books here from classes that are happening. This is not theoretical. This is happening in Gainesville, Florida. When you have a book that's called Queer Your Classroom, or you got a book that says it's a human growth class for 11-year-olds that talks about you're not really a boy or a girl. You can be either or neither. You can be whatever you want to be. And by the way, if you're having any self-doubts about yourself, as a lot of middle school kids do, it's probably a result of the fact that you were born into a body that's not really what you should have been born into. This is a tragedy. And people, again, are saying, well, this is California. This is Gainesville, Florida. And I've got the textbooks to show you, and I've got a lot of research to show you that I don't think parents want their kids taught that. But by the way, and we could spend 30 minutes or more on just on this topic.
For sure.
If you look at for example, the class at PK Young, of the 4 goals of the class, the third goal is for the student to find a trusted adult, and the language is clear, to find a trusted adult, which you can talk to about sexual identity issues, transgender issues, sexual relation issues. I have 2 daughters. They're older now. If I sent my daughters to a school when they were 11 years old, and the goal of the class is for my daughters to find some adult, not the parents, to have a relationship with, that they can then talk about the dynamics of this, that's unacceptable. And I think it is for most parents, but it's happening now. And the reason that we're in this situation is because we can't have a dialogue. Like right now, if you play this, I will be called a transphobic or a homophobic or a bigot or whatever else they want to call me. Now, we won't have conversation on the policy. We won't have conversation on the class and what's appropriate and inappropriate and not appropriate. What do we want to do? It's just shut the conversation down because you're transphobic. And we've been told that for 10, 15, 20 years now, that we're not allowed to discuss these topics. It is being taught to our children in our schools by the government. And I don't call schools, I call them what they are. They are a government institution. And it is not the government's role, in my opinion, to segregate. And by the way, you can get into the other things about, and the way they want to have this trusted adult is they use words like shaming, and your parents may not agree, and blah, blah, blah. Again, it's to divide and say your parents are not the ones that you can trust. And the parents are not the ones to have the conversation with, because they won't understand. This is what the book says. Mm-hmm. If you confide in your parents, they will not, there's a likelihood your parents will not understand. Well, they're predisposing the kid to think, okay, that trusted adult is not my parent. Mm-hmm. So this is the biggest topic. It's going to be super controversial. It shouldn't be controversial from a discussion standpoint at all. Mm-hmm. And if the other side tries to shut down you, me, whoever, we need to call that out for what it is and say, no, we're going to have conversation, and we're going to make public policy that's transparent. We're going to make public policy that's out in the open, and we're going to have 100%, we're going to have parents involved in the discussion of this moving forward. And I'm not trying to dictate what the school should be teaching the parents. I'm saying the parents are going to be involved in this process. And I'm going to take my direction and input from parents way more than I'm going to take from government, school board, or school employee or administrator or teacher. I'll listen to them. They can be part of the conversation, but it's not going to be dictated by them. So big, huge issue. Again, we could talk for 30 minutes on this. We can talk about the ramifications that are happening in California, where they've already implemented this, and some of the dire issues that are happening, in my opinion. So that's going to be controversial. That's going to be that's going to cause a lot of, I know I get a lot of hate mail. Hey, that's it. We'll take the hate mail, but we're going to have the conversation.
All right. Well, terrific. I do wish we could spend another 30 minutes talking about this and many other issues that, that are critical today and that deserve to be talked about. So I'm glad you were able to take the time to talk with us today. And I wanted to emphasize as we close out that at the Greater Gainesville Chamber, we are committed to making sure everybody gets their voice and gets to learn about the issues and then take them to the ballot box on November 8th. So please visit our website, Greater Gainesville Chamber, or GainesvilleChamber.com, and we will have all of these candidate interviews. We'll have the dates you need to know, and make sure that you are well prepared when you hit that box on November 8th. Thanks again, Keith. Thanks again. Always great to talk to you.
You bet.
And we'll see you around town. Best of luck until November 8th.
Got it. Thanks. Bye.